Welcome back to another episode of Conservative Conversations with your hosts, Reid and Frank. And today's date is Wednesday, January the 12th. How you doing, Frank?
Doing pretty well.
That's good. And I believe this is our first recording of the new year.
That's right, 2022.
That's right, and we're going to start it off with some predictions for this year.
Yeah,
And
just like we did last year, right?
That's right. And I think we got some good things coming our way this year. Don't you think?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot coming our way this year, and I certainly hope that it's good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
But, only time will tell, I guess.
that's true.
So, I don't know who you wanted to start off with, but
We'll start with yours since it's going to be the more recent one, hopefully.
well, I was going to start
The
with
soonest, I should say.
I was actually going to start with I was going to follow up, sort of double down
Oh,
on
okay.
something that I said last year. If you remember, of course, the folks could go back and view the episode from this time last year where we made predictions. But, I very cautiously said I would never wish ill on our president. I guess he is our president. But I had said that he'd probably die just from old age, expiring, not being in the best health within 2 years of his presidency. So here we are going into year number 2. And I actually found some really interesting video, that I shared with you earlier today. And we'll post up available for the people. But it's actually old audio of President Ford after he had left office, and he had gone on a tour around the country talking to different students. And a young lady at one of the schools or universities that he was at asked him his thoughts on a female president. And he answered with something that I found to be almost shocking. But he said we would have a female president, but that the way that it would happen would be different than normal. That we wouldn't just elect her outright, but that she would have been the VP on a winning ticket, and then the president, the male president, would die, making her the first female vice president. So don't you find that really interesting? I mean, I had never heard that audio before. I think I only found it maybe just a couple days ago or a week or two at most. But pretty interesting, huh?
It is certainly interesting that he would predict it to go that way, and like you said, we certainly don't wish any ill on the president, but it's not an unlikely scenario, given how old he is, and anytime he gives a speech, he's always coughing. Sometimes he's coughing pretty hard. Sometimes it's a relatively normal cough, but he's old, and his brain's turning to mush, and that's just a sign of people on their way out at some point. So it is interesting that he would predict it to kind of happen that way 20 some odd years ago.
Well, one might argue Joe Biden's brain has always been mush, but
True.
he definitely seems to be on the decline anyway.
Right.
So I guess we'll just have to see if that comes true. I mean, I hate the idea that Kamala is going to be the first female president. I think there's a lot more likely and better candidates out there, but
Right, and that's another thing that President Ford had said in the video, is that he believes if it did happen that a female got into the presidency in the way he predicts, it would be hard to undo it. And I had mentioned to you, earlier off air, that if it were to happen, especially with Kamala Harris as the vice president, I don't think his prediction that it'd be hard to be undone would really be true, because Kamala Harris is not popular with pretty much anybody, even people in her own party, in their own administration. So I don't see how unless they go changing the rules like they're fond of doing. I don't think it would stick and be something that can't be undone.
Well, we'll just have to see.
Right. And I guess I'll go ahead and go to one of my predictions. We can kind of go back and forth. One of them is that I think this year we'll still see, if not a still declining economic situation, certainly one that's going to drag on for a while. I doubt there will be too much improvement over the course of this year. As we record, they just released new stats on the rates of inflation. I think now they're saying the year-over-year increase was like up 7%, and it's the highest increase since the 80s or something like that. And, stuff like this doesn't just go back to normal or recede quickly. It takes time. There's ripple effects, and those effects have to be straightened out. So I think the economic situation will probably still be a bit of a struggle for this year. Today they were touting, the Biden administration was touting the lowest unemployment rate, down to 3.9%, the highest wage increases, the highest rates of employment, and it's all phony numbers because I bet you they're basing it on 2020 compared to then. Because practically the whole first half of 2020, there's very little economic activity going on.
Well, yeah, we were on lockdown.
Yeah. So obviously from 2020 to 2021, it's going to look like huge increases. So their numbers aren't real, what they're citing. I mean, I shouldn't say they're not real. They're not as impressive as they would, lead you to believe they are. So I don't think it's just going to snap back very quickly like they'll try to portray it. It'll drag on.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you're exactly right. I mean, Jerome Powell, he just said that the Fed's probably going to raise interest rates by something like another 0.25%. Yeah. I just saw a clip on Fox News just a short while ago, him warning that there may be a recession coming. Mm-hmm. We're still having these supply chain issues. You keep hearing about all these people quitting over the vaccine mandates. So, yeah, to hear something like lowest unemployment, they have to be cooking those books.
Yeah.
And if what they say the inflation rate is at 7%, I think you could probably, at least double it, maybe even triple it. Mm-hmm. Because we just saw a stat off Fox News that the price of beef and veal is up almost 20%. The price of chicken's up something like 17, over 15%.
Yeah, used cars are up 30%. All kinds of stuff.
So what kind of funny numbers, to say lowest unemployment and highest wages when you can't go to the store and buy beef, anymore, right. It seems. It's outrageous. I know what we paid for a corned beef brisket on New Year's. It's the most I've ever paid in my lifetime.
Right. Yep. And, the part of the problem with, even if employers are, air quotes, raising wages, it's just getting erased by the increase of inflation.
Right.
So you might get paid $2 an hour more, but when you're paying 20% or more to go buy your necessities, it just takes away everything you gained in your raise.
Or like Newt Gingrich said on Fox tonight, if you're used to buying a particular brand, and because of these supply shortages, it's not there.
Right.
You might have to buy a more expensive brand.
Yep, I've definitely had to do that before.
So some of your cost is getting eaten up there, you know.
So My first prediction is the economic situation will continue, at least as is, if it doesn't get any worse. It'll be a bumpy ride for pocketbooks. At least this year, probably early into next year, I'd say.
Well, to take it over, very interesting thing in my opinion. There's a lot going on with the House of Representatives this year in 2022. There's a lot of people out there who are saying that it's going to be a bloodbath. That's not exactly my term. That's been thrown around a lot.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of warning signs that this will be true. Not just the redistricting that we've covered already, but, I think there's something now like 26 Democrats who are set to retire from their congressional seats.
Yeah, I've heard something like that. It's a huge number.
And from what I can tell, it's just because they don't want to run on an association with Biden and this track record of this president. They don't want to be anywhere close to it. They figure they'll lose or have to fight, practically tooth and nail.
Right.
And maybe they're just not prepared for the fight, or they just don't want to go through it. And I think another big tell is, something that's really hit the headlines here in recent days is all of this news about congressional members making vast sums of money off of the stock market. And there's talk that they may introduce legislation to ban that sort of almost like insider trading, because they often will sit on these committees. They write the laws that affect these companies. And I've heard a lot of talk about how Nancy Pelosi probably isn't going to run again.
Yep.
Now, I've seen conflicting headlines that say she will run again because she's trying to keep the House under Democratic control, and, she kind of wants to give a sign of strength, for the Democrats. But I think I think she's one of the ones who's made the most. She just, according to certain reports, she just took a $30 million cash out, she or her husband, off of certain stocks.
Yep.
And I just figure, putting two and two together, reading the writing on the wall, why would she be taking huge cash outs like that, risking her career, getting all these negative headlines and all of this flack?
If she's going to stay in.
If she was going to stay in, exactly. Yeah. She might be a little more subtle, or just make $1 million instead of 30.
Right.
Yep.
Good
so
point.
I think that's really interesting. And one of my predictions on that point would be, there's all this talk of who's going to be the next Speaker of the House. And my prediction for the people here is that it will be Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, he'd be a pretty good one. He's not necessarily my favorite person, because kind of like Ted Cruz, we like him, but we don't necessarily trust him. Or at least I don't. Well, I'm not saying I don't trust Kevin McCarthy. I just haven't been that fond of him. And sometimes, for me, it can be as simple as the way they talk really kind of rubs me the wrong way. And Kevin McCarthy is one of them. Just the way he speaks, just doesn't always seem so genuine to me.
Well,
but to get back sort of what I was saying, I do think he's good. I think he's good at what he does. I like that he's in the party. He fights for the right things. And I'd certainly be glad to see him as the Speaker of the House.
Well, I like Kevin McCarthy, and I certainly understand your skepticism. And here's another thing. This might even be another prediction I didn't expect to make, but I doubt we will like Kevin McCarthy after he has held the gavel. It seems to corrupt people. And you're right, there there have been things about Kevin that don't exactly line up all the time, you know. I don't know that we necessarily need to get into them, but one of the most recent ones was they took, what's her name, Marjorie Taylor Greene, down from Twitter.
Yeah,
they
he didn't back her.
He didn't even mention her when he came out and gave a speech after the fact, and he was talking about that event. He didn't even say her name. He just talked about censorship, big tech, blah, blah, blah. Just sort of a lot of hot air.
Yeah, because I don't think he wants to be associated with her, because... Now, I don't know a whole lot about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I definitely get the sense that she's not the most popular person in the Republican Party, and not too many people, particularly in the House, likely want to associate with her.
Well, she is very controversial.
Yes, for sure.
Like her or not.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I think I can agree with the prediction that he will be the Speaker of the House if, God willing, the Republicans take control of the House, which it seems very likely.
Yep.
And is that it for that prediction of yours?
Yep, that's it for that one. I mean, just as a sort of addendum to it is, there's been a lot of talk of maybe it'll be Hakeem Jeffries or maybe it'll be some other Democrat. And so that's just was the prediction I wanted to make is I don't think it will be a Democrat at all. I don't think it'll be Hakeem Jeffries. I don't think that they'll have to infight within the Democratic Party.
Right.
I think it will be Kevin McCarthy.
Right. Yeah, I don't see who else it would be for a Republican. I mean, because he's already he is the leader of the House for the Republicans. So
right.
It makes sense.
Yep.
So, and then my next prediction is that I think overall we will see more increased activities from some of our foreign adversaries, because we've already started to see it. China's been getting a little aggressive towards Taiwan. We all heard recently about Russia and Crimea, and even more recently, there have been reports of North Korea testing new missiles that they claim are supersonic or hypersonic, but from my understanding, that might be a little not true. I definitely would guess that they certainly are testing missiles, but the supersonic, hypersonic part, I'm not sure about.
You're talking about North Korea where they invented the burrito, right?
Yeah, the burrito missile. Yeah. Yep, North Korea.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, for, a couple years, somebody on Fox the other day, I forget which face said it, but for like 2 to 3 years, Russia was fairly quiet while Trump was in office. China was somewhat quiet while Trump was in office. North Korea had been pretty silent, and certainly in the Middle East was, pretty well handled.
Well, we just had signed a peace deal right as Trump was leaving.
Yep, the Abraham Accords.
Mm-hmm.
And, and since Biden has been in office, a lot of that's basically been undone. And I don't necessarily mean as a policy matter. I'm sure some of it may have been. But just in general, the way the countries have been acting has sort of been undone. Like I said, particularly with North Korea, I feel like they were the ones that were, kind of the quietest after a while once Trump got into office. But now they're piping up again, they're making noise, and, China's being more aggressive towards Taiwan, like I mentioned. And we haven't really seen Joe Biden do anything, serious to try to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. And I don't think he will. I don't see why he would. Because we've all heard the reports and seen the articles about, you know, Biden and Hunter Biden, dealing with China and
Ukraine.
Russia, yeah, the Ukraine. So they don't have any good incentive to, outright stop China or Russia or North Korea in whatever it is they're trying to do. So I think we'll see. I don't know exactly what. I'm not trying to make any specific predictions on what kind of actions they'll take, but they're definitely not going to stop what they've already started.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's Biden's ineptness and corruptness. It's
Right.
those two things. That's exactly why all these little fires have flared back up again
Right,
all
and
over
I
the
didn't
world.
even mention the Middle East, other than you briefly mentioned the peace deal with Israel and all that.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be back on the path towards the nuke again.
Yeah, Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. See,
So, pretty scary.
it is. I think it's Now, if I were to make one prediction about specific actions, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more terrorist activity. I don't know if we'll see anything big here at home, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more stuff overseas in the near-ish future, later in the year. I don't think it'll be really soon, because it's not fighting season over there right now. It's the wintertime.
Well, I'm sure you're right, and what you've just said pretty much leads me right into my next two topics,
All right.
pretty easily. And the way you're talking about, it's sort of scary, these things that are happening around the world. I saw some interesting things today that are happening right here at home. And I think if you'll bear with me, it sounds kind of scary, but if you let me walk you through, I've got maybe 2 or 3 points on it. I saw an article came out of the Daily Mail today, and they're saying that the military, our military, is in North Carolina, and they're doing a 2-week training called something like Operation Robin Sage. It's definitely called Robin Sage, and it's what they're calling a Civil War rehearsal. And according to the language in the article, what the military is training to do is to overthrow an illegitimate government. So that sounds pretty foreboding right there. But then this is coming on the back of, the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland. They just created a brand new task force, or
Domestic terror or something like that.
yes, on domestic terror. And you've seen them call teachers, parents, not teachers, parents domestic terrorists. They've called those people who were at the mostly peaceful protest on January 6th, they've called them domestic terrorists, even though no one's been charged with terrorism or even a gun crime. It's all just been trespassing is the only thing anybody's been charged with.
I almost feel like I've heard people play clips of mouthpieces on CNN and MSNBC calling unvaccinated people like domestic terrorists.
Exactly. So that's really heating up. And then if you think back, this is the last point I thought of on this topic, is the language that we've been hearing, I think over like the last 3 political cycles, the last 3 presidential runs, we've been hearing a lot of language from people about stolen elections and coups. Biden was just down in Georgia yesterday, I think it was, and he made a speech talking, of course he's referring to January 6th, but he called that a violent coup, that there was this attempt at a violent coup. But if you think back, Hillary, she said, I think her quote's something to the effect of like, you can run the best campaign and you can win the nomination, but it doesn't matter if the election's stolen from you. That's something Hillary said.
Mm-hmm.
And then even Trump, he sat, even though he won the first time, he sat and said that they did an attempted coup on him because remember they spied on his campaign
Yep.
and tried to sabotage him or sandbag him with the whole Russian collusion story.
Yep.
And then once he lost, now you have Biden. So we're seeing like three big people, three big cycles. Here's Biden again using the term coup, violent coup. So it almost seems like it's getting amped up. And then you hear about the military doing these exercises, and you hear about the Department of Justice creating this whole new task force for domestic terrorists, and you're hearing people called domestic terrorists who obviously aren't.
Right.
So I even worry not just for the world at large, but even right here at home, I think things are going to get uglier, possibly. Hopefully not.
Right.
But possibly uglier than we've ever seen them.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with some of that for sure. I think our political divisions are definitely going to get wider because, as the saying always goes, it gets worse before it gets better, and I don't think we've seen the worst yet.
Well, and it leads me, like I said, it piggybacked, what you said piggybacked into my next two topics. So the next one would be, it seems like people are waking up about the vaccine now, or about the COVID-19, excuse me. And it seems like people are saying, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're vaxxed or triple vaxxed or double vaxxed or whatever. Everybody's still catching the COVID, no matter who they are, where they live, what they do, or what political stripe they are. So my next prediction on that front, since the fear is kind of wearing off, and that doesn't work very well. How do you cudgel people and corral people and control people if they're not afraid for their lives?
Yep.
So this one will be short and sweet, but they'll have to come out with another virus, another variant, and I think it's going to be Sigma.
Yep, Sigma. That's a good one.
The Sigma variant. So be on the lookout, people. Watch for Sigma. I think I already saw it. It just came in on a bus. Saw it done at the bus stop on the corner.
It's got a big S on its head. Sigma on its head.
I don't know that the Greek letters look like our letters, but...
Well, whatever a Sigma looks like, it's got it on it.
And then I think that takes us over. Did you have any more particular predictions?
Not really. Nothing that really sticks out in my mind that I can feel like I can, sort of see what might be or might not be going on.
Well, I have two last ones, but the one I'd like to save for last is kind of personal. I'd just like to slip it in if you and the listeners don't mind. But on the last, important topic that I'd like to talk about is going to be some of the Supreme Court decisions that I think we're going to see this year. And I didn't look at their full docket. I just happen to know about two in particular that have made a lot of headlines on the tail end of last year, 2021. But the first is going to be the vaccine mandate. They've already had oral arguments. I've gotten to listen to some of the clips. I didn't listen to the whole, kit and caboodle, the whole shebang. But I happened to notice right before we came onto air that the Supreme Court did update their calendar. And now tomorrow is going to be a ruling day. They're going to issue a ruling tomorrow. So that'll be Thursday the 13th.
Of January.
Of January in 2022. And I bet you just based off of what I've interacted with, what I've seen, what I've read, I think it's going to come down 6-3. That the federal government cannot require these vaccines. And that's to say they can for federal workers and certain loopholes like that.
Right.
But they can't force it on private businesses, private people, in private places in the various states.
Right.
I think it's going to be ruled as a sort of 10th Amendment states' right issue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my prediction there.
Well, that would be proper.
I agree.
Yep. And if it doesn't go that way, it would honestly probably be one of the, biggest shames I've witnessed in the court since I've really been paying attention, especially after the ridiculous claims we heard, particularly one of the justices make, about the thousands of kids in the hospital on ventilators.
Well, it wasn't just one. Don't forget Breyer, too. He said something like 750 million people a day were testing positive for COVID, and there's only 330 million people in the United States.
Yeah. I wasn't sure I couldn't remember what his
It was
claim
outlandish.
was. I remember in Sotomayor, so that's why I specifically mentioned hers. But yeah, if I can't imagine. They're not supposed to rule based on stuff like that. They're supposed to follow the law.
Sensationalism.
Right. They're supposed to follow the law, but if the other justices who heard that and didn't think, what in the F are they saying, and decide to vote in what we would say is a negative way, I don't know. I don't even know what. It's lots of words. It'd be shameful in the court. I don't know.
It would be absolutely shameful.
One of the worst decisions they could probably do.
Well, and I'd like to know how, after making such horrible mistakes as the three liberal justices did, I'd like to know how they could sit there. I mean, they've been a laughingstock in the news for the last several days.
Yep.
I'd like to know how they could sit there and still rule, just on a party line, when they're supposed to be nonpartisan, the most nonpartisan branch of government.
Right. Supposedly.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
The other one, Roe v. Wade.
Mm-hmm.
There's been lots of talk that will be overturned this year. And I think, mark my words, here's my prediction.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be 6-3. It'll be 5-4. With Roberts going to the liberals.
Yeah, I think it'll be a sort of a close one on that, and it'll be a big one if they do overturn it, sending all the power back to the states the way it ought to be.
That's the way it was before Roe.
Yep.
Before Roe.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But so that's my prediction. It's going to be 6-3 on the vax, 5-4 on Roe. But Roe will be overturned.
Right. And I think in several decades of time, hopefully, our society will look back and think, what on earth were those people thinking for 50, 60 years, allowing all those abortions to happen like that?
Well, there will be a lot more people to think that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep, that's true. Yep. Because I've heard other conservatives describe, the whole abortion mess as like America's second sin after slavery or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully, God willing, it will be overturned and all the babies will be born. Well, not all of them, because
who make it.
Right. California.
All the ones who should naturally make it, yes.
And New York and stinkhole liberal states like that will, unfortunately, but it is the proper way our country should go. They'll be able to make their own rules.
Well, And that leads me right into my last one that I'd like to get out, if I may. This is more personal. It has nothing to do with our news. It's maybe something that should go on our Wacky channel, the Wacky radio show, if you wanted to check that out. But my best friend is pregnant, and I've predicted a few times. I just want to put it on air so it's properly on record. She's just come into her 12th week of pregnancy. They don't know the sex yet. And I'm telling you, folks, it's going to be a little baby girl.
I think it probably will be too. You know, I didn't mention this the other night. This is going to be sort of still a little personal. We were all hanging out together on Monday, and while we were at the restaurant, and Lauren was talking about her trip to Paris and the song with her mom and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And then you mentioned how in the Bible it says, when 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I'll be, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of saying that you think her mom is right there with us.
Yep.
I almost felt like I could feel it, even though I've never met Lauren's mom.
Mm-hmm.
I almost felt like there was some presence there, because listening to Lauren tell her story and then you saying that, it made me feel all, sort of sentimental, and I wouldn't say there's a chill running down my spine, but, you get certain feelings sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So
well, and I'm a
it.
believer. I really am.
Oh, yes.
But I would ask, there's a lot to worry about.
Sure.
Not just in this life, but especially when you're carrying a youngster into the world. And
Sure.
so for those of you who are believers out there, I hope that you would pray, not just for my friend's baby, but for all of them, that maybe
That's
that
right.
Roe gets overturned, maybe for the world at large, because we certainly hope this will be a good year. There are some exciting things on the frontier, and we're coming into it with zeal. We've got a lot of things in the pipeline for
The
this
wind
channel.
is at our back.
That's exactly right. But you have to keep focus of what's important, and so yeah. Hopefully you'll keep all of that in your prayers, folks.
Right. And the good fight never stops.
Well,
I think that just about wraps it up for us.
that's exactly right. And if you'd want to check out our website, it is contemporaryconservative.net.
Yep. And you can send us your predictions for the year to our email addresses directly, or you can leave them in some comments on our video it's not an actual video, but it's on YouTube. You can find our show. You can find our other show, the Wacky radio show, also on YouTube. Links will be in the description. Our email addresses will be in the description. And we'll probably revisit our predictions in a year, see how they turned out. And maybe we'll do what we did last time and check in halfway, see how they're going sometime in 6 months or so.
Well, I'm sure it'll come up, if we're proven right or wrong at some point with some headline. We'll probably say, Eureka.
Yep, that's right. And we hope you listeners have enjoyed this episode, and we hope you tune in next time.
And as always, we thank you for listening.